You're not ready to give up on homeschooling, but you need to figure out how to work through some problems.
Hello, I'm Miss Andrea.
And I'm Mare. Some of the questions that we're getting, we kind of put several together because they all fall under the header of troubleshooting the homeschool experience. How do I know when my child needs a break?
Sometimes we accidentally overload our children.
We do. Sometimes our children accidentally overload themselves.
They will. Some of them will. And we won't know that they need a break until they are literally at a wall.
Yes.
When a child is emotionally spent, when a child is especially irritable, when it's just season for a break to shift into a different mode of operation, then we need to be looking at our kids and saying, okay, let's go for a walk. Let's put that down now. And so the easiest time to give a break is right now.
Right.
In the summer, we can say, oh, it's summertime. Yes, we're going to do a little math year round. But besides that, let's go to some museums. Let's get to the beach. Let's go do some nature things.
Right.
Here's a little crescent sun. Do you see him?
And so we can use that seasonal break to pull the child a little bit away. And it's really funny because it so much depends on the child. I just remember my brother and I at the kitchen table, and he's sitting there singing, because we didn't have social media back then. We had MTV, and that was it. So he was sitting there singing, and I was sitting there crying. And Mom said, you go for a walk, you pick up a book. The children will tell you non-verbally.
They will.
Generally, if they need more or less structure, but you have to be watching them.
That's super important, because I think if you need to identify, okay, my child needs to step away from what they're doing, it requires a baseline understanding of who your child is when they're not under stress.
Mm-hmm.
If you are intimately aware of who your child is, of how they behave, of their normal responses to things, and all of a sudden you're seeing different responses, that's probably time to take a step back.
We had some really good cues. One sibling, she would be really mean to her brother when she was feeling stress. That usually coincided with Tech Week.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a child in theater, you know that as we approach show date, you start to see stressors.
Right.
And so that's how I learned my child's stressor, because her brother would get broken. It's twice her size. She's jumping on him from the fourth stair, and even things that seemed playful were just kind of mean and insidious, and she was taking out her stress on him. So when you have a sibling set, you get to see if the arguments start to escalate.
Right.
Somebody's stressed out.
Right.
If they start arguing with you.
Right.
When normally they wouldn't argue with you so much. Somebody's stressed out. And as parents, especially when they hit those tween years, we're so quick to say hormones.
Right.
When, hormones might have something to do with it. It might shorten their patience. But there's something in the world itching them.
Right.
And so we have to figure out what it is. Either push through and then relax, or pull back, recover, and then move forward again. It depends on what the item is.
Well, and it depends on where they are in the process.
Right.
If your student is really, really, really close to finishing something,
Mm-hmm.
say there's one assignment left in the school year, go ahead and try and push through that before taking the break.
Right.
If it's something where we're halfway through the process, might be time to take a little step back and then come back and pick back up. Even though there may be a little bit of learning curve.
Alter the approach to the assignment, because sometimes kids go too ambitious when they're working on a project, and they just go overboard. And so you might need to look and say, okay, I see why you're stressed out.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do that. Maybe we should re-engineer this assignment.
Something that we see working with kids with passion projects.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times kids have these big ideas, and they're amazing ideas. And it may be that still is something that is attainable, but maybe not on the timeline that the child artificially set for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may be necessary to break something like that down into smaller pieces and say, okay, right now we're going to take a step back, and now we're going to focus on just this part. For instance, there's a student that we've worked with who has a very clear picture of what the end goal is, but wasn't quite prepared to start jumping into it. And so the step back there was, okay, sit down with a journal and just journal every day. And that's going to then provide the material to step into the next step.
Right.
So there are ways to scale back depending on what the project is, depending on what's causing the overwhelm. There are ways to adjust that so that it becomes less stressful, more manageable, more bite-sized.
Right. And homeschooling, it's real easy to push a child too hard, and it's real easy to not push a child at all.
Right.
And so I kind of sit back and take cues from the child. Some children you don't have to push.
Right.
And those are the children who I'm like, are you doing too much? Is there a simpler way to do this? Can we re-engineer this? And then there are some kids who are like, it's going to happen magically while I'm asleep.
It's never happened magically while they're asleep.
No. Then you have to start giving them little bite-sized tasks.
Milestones.
To move them in the direction of where they're going.
Well, here's the thing. If maybe you don't know your child as well as you'd like to, maybe your child's coming out of a highly stressful traditional school environment, and you need to get to know who your child is at this moment in their life. That's a good time for a break.
Yeah.
Take a step back
vacation
and get to know your child. And even if you can't like up and go anywhere, take time to try and find ways to reconnect in the environment that you're in.
I mean, I've literally spent summers watching my children sleep.
So you're going to have to explain that.
Because I wanted to figure out when they were most alert, when they were most active, when they were most lethargic, when they were most stunned.
Yeah.
It informed the next school year.
My child's tell was he would completely zone out. All of a sudden he was engaging. Lights are on, nobody's home. That was the key of like, okay, we need to stop and we will revisit this later.
Right.
So get to know your child's proclivities and you'll be able to identify what are the tells.
Yeah. My kids we're going to finish what we start. If it kills us, then I would go in and say, well, let's alter this assignment so no one dies.
Because not
so sometimes it's not a break. Sometimes it's an adjustment.
All right, so the next one. How do I know if I'm pushing my child too hard or not pushing my child hard enough?
You know you're pushing your child too hard when they stop making progress. It's like a really smart kid who kind of eats up everything you give them and they suddenly stop. You may have temporarily broken your child. We broke your kid once.
We did. We broke my child more than once.
Yes, it was Hamlet.
Yep, Hamlet absolutely broke my child.
He learned the entire show and then probably forgot his lines and only his lines.
He was playing Hamlet at the time.
We pushed him too hard.
He pushed himself too hard.
We had to sit back and wait for his brain to reset.
Yeah.
And pray.
And thankfully it reset Tech Week.
Yeah.
Because we were highly concerned that Hamlet wasn't going to be able to say any lines.
Right.
He remembered everybody else's lines, just not his.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Tech Week, he kind of reset and things came good.
Sometimes that child breaking is real evident, but what happens sometimes is just a child is just a self-starter. And so you're like, okay, I threw something at them, they did it. I threw something at it, they did it. And you just keep throwing things at them because they're doing it.
Right.
The homeschool philosophy world that I live in, you graduate that child at 16 if you can.
And we're going to do a video about that too.
Yeah. But sometimes that emotional maturity and that academic ability aren't quite aligned.
No.
And cracks start to show.
Right.
Tears, just full stop. Just a full stop. Or just maybe just bomb a quiz or just start doing poorly. It's time to hit the reset button.
Yeah, because fundamentally what it comes down to is the same tells that it's time for your child to take a break are going to appear if you're pushing your child too hard. It's kind of the same reaction that you're going to get.
Interestingly, if you're not pushing them hard enough, you're going to see some of those same things.
Potentially, yeah. When you're not pushing your child hard enough, that's a harder thing to identify.
If you're not pushing your child hard enough, they're going to have a lot of idle time, and you'll see them finding interesting ways of filling that time. Maybe over obsession with video games that aren't teaching them anything at all. Mindless videos. And you know I love videos. Videos are great to learn with. But they've just fallen into a rut where they just want to stare at a screen all day and do nothing but stare at that screen. If your child has so much time to go and start getting into a little bit of trouble or start digging into things that you would not have them do or that are a little bit out of their character up until now, that's just an indicator of too much idle time.
Right.
And so you need to fill that time either with something physical, that'll grow them in some way.
Right.
Athletic or academic.
Right.
Because
So,
there's a lot of different ways to push your child.
to that point, because we're troubleshooting the homeschool process. You have a child. Up to this point, you've not been pushing them hard enough, so they've developed these habits of things that they do with their idle time. How do you kick them out of that and get them actually working again? I mean, just assigning work isn't going to get them to do it.
No, because now they feel like you're punishing them.
Right.
Okay, so let me think about this. I have a child, and I haven't been pushing them very hard. And they've gotten into a rut.
Yep.
And they feel like, I'm going to do what I've been doing.
Right.
You're not going to change this now.
Right.
This is a problem. So what you do is you introduce something foreign to them.
Okay.
You don't say, we're going to keep homeschooling in the house, but now I'm going to give you all these subjects. You say, hey, I found this neat class. I found this group of people. That's when we introduce something brand new.
Change the environment.
And yeah, we change the environment. By all means, don't make them feel punished.
Right.
Because it's both you and the kid that have gotten in this position where they're not getting pushed hard enough.
Right.
Right? And so now we need to be creative. We need to say, hey, there's a museum series that we're going to go do together.
Cool.
If you can do it together,
yes,
that's amazing. We're going to go take a ceramics class. There's a homeschool co-op over there. I hear they're doing a play.
The library has an event. They're bringing snakes.
Right. So yeah, don't just be like, you're not doing enough, you're going to get punished with more work. Say, we're not doing enough.
Right.
We're going to try some different things. For me in middle school, we hit the middle school years and it got a little too easy. So I instituted Field Trip Fridays.
Nice.
Bodies, the exhibition was a lot. But
Whole biology course.
We went 3 times and my kids knew biology. That's for certain. You can find a series of things that both you and your child enjoy. End of the day, the way to fix that is to do something as a unit and not just throw more work at a child and punish a child. Because you not only have to get the child to do more things, you have to engage yourself into doing more things. And so maybe you work a full-time job and maybe that's not possible. In that case, do those things on the weekend, or you find an organization that the child can join that's going to be an extracurricular. Get them to fill that time first and then up the academics. Right. Don't just throw more academics on it because they're not going to understand. That's like hitting a puppy with a newspaper an hour after they did the thing. Right. They're not going to understand. So their time spent and then slide the extra academics in is my thought.
That's fair. How do I know if I should call it quits? Woo! We've been homeschooling. It's not working. How do I know when I should be troubleshooting this homeschooling thing? And how do I know when we need to be doing something entirely different?
I'm of the opinion that nothing is more important than the parent and child relationship.
Agreed.
And so I would do whatever I had to do to maintain that parent-child relationship. That might be more homeschooling. That might be full stop. Right. That might be my favorite thing to do and make a different adult the bad guy. Put them in a class. Yep. Put them in a co-op class, some kind of a course, so that you can say, I'm just going to parent you this year or this semester, and I'm going to let someone else teach you. That worked really well for my middle schoolers. Right. Because they were like, oh, Mom, we'll do whatever you say. I'm not doing it. Or, I don't wanna. And I was like, okay. Like teachers turning into screamy parent. That's not good for our relationship. So I'm going to back down to calm parent and get a different face, being the face of academic authority. And I think each child did that for 2 years, and they came back and they were like, you homeschool us because we were moving faster when you were doing it. That's my experience. It's not going to be everyone's experience. Right. But those are your 3 options.
Well, that to me doesn't really feel like you're calling it quits. That to me is, this isn't working, so we're going to try these things.
Well, yeah, okay. I've never been in a position to call it quits. However, if you've tried to redirect the authority, the academic authority, and the children haven't bitten and there's no chance that they're ever going to bite, you have to preserve your relationship. Right. What does that mean?
Well, and then you also have to educate your child.
Right.
If you stop educating your child and they don't
that's going to hurt your child more in the long run.
That's a bigger issue down the road. Mm-hmm. I would also say that there may be lifestyle changes. something has happened in your household.
Oh, yeah.
You might have been having this great homeschool experience, but for whatever reason, the
Illness
primary
is a big reason to change what you're doing.
right.
Whether it be moving from public to home or home to public.
Right.
Illness in the household is a big reason. I've seen children lose an entire year of academics due to illness in the house. Is that the worst thing for the child? In a couple of cases, no.
It depends on how old the child is, where they are in their educational journey. That's far more detrimental to a high schooler than it is to, say, a middle schooler.
Right. So illness is an issue.
Right.
Marriage change.
Status. Some
Marriage
kind of change.
status.
Whether that's a separation, whether that's a blending of new family members.
It's a huge.
That may definitely affect whether or not
clearly
you
I'm
can
feeling
continue.
this the depth of my soul.
Yeah.
Do not homeschool your child if the other parent is not in agreement. Period.
Everybody has to be on the same
Period.
page.
It has been where one parent wanted to homeschool and the other parent was like, well, I guess.
Right.
And that turned into.
And that turns into weapons that can be used against
later.
Yeah.
So that's a condition where you might look at the overall situation and say, my child's education is safer in a school right now.
Right.
Because we as a family are not on the same page.
Yep. Financial reasons could be another reason that you have to change how you're doing education, even if things are going well. If all of a sudden, all of the responsible parents have to go out of the house to earn income in order to support the family, depending on the age of the child, depending on where they are in their educational journey, that may require going to a traditional schooling environment, even if that's not ideal.
I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to require an entire video.
We can do a video.
The most successful cases of homeschooling that I know of were people who went to traditional school but had a homeschool mindset. So they were like, school's great. They're going to go to school. They're going to do their assignments. They're going to get their grades. And then I'm going to teach them some things at home.
Yep. And that can be an excellent opportunity if there is like a financial change and all of a sudden the primary homeschooling parent has to go back to the workplace. To have your normal school day, you meet those requirements. But then on the evenings, on the weekends, you go back in and you supplement what they're getting in the traditional schooling environment so that they can learn faster, so they can learn better.
So that you can fill holes.
So you
Because
can pursue
in school,
passions.
you have to go at a certain rate.
Right.
And so maybe your child needs more instruction and you can fill that in.
Right. So those are a few ways to troubleshoot the homeschooling experience. If you're having some difficulties, there are absolutely things that you can do to try and get things back on the right track. If it's not something that's going to happen, then that's okay. Having to go back to a traditional schooling environment, even when homeschooling is something you firmly believe in, that doesn't mean that anybody has failed in anything. It just means that for this season that you have to do something differently.
Absolutely. If you have any specific questions you would love for us to address, either in writing or in video form, please leave your question in the comments. We'll
get to it.
So happy to answer these questions. If you don't know, I am 20 years in on this homeschool experience. And what are you, like 6?
Oh, I guess it has been 6. Wow, has it only been 6 years? Oh.
Existential crisis.
Wow. It feels like it's been a lot longer than
Yeah.
that. But no, I think you're correct. So yes, leave us questions if you'd like them answered. We are always happy to do that. And until next time.